You're listening to a Rogue Agents episode rebroadcast that the Longbox Crusade crew made for the other podcast network where we do a little work on Her Majesty's Secret podcast. We encourage you to check out on Her Majesty's Secret podcast and its feed for new episodes and additional content. We hope you enjoy these older Rogue Agents episodes re-released here on the Longbox Crusade Network.
Hello and welcome to Her Majesty's Secret podcast, brought to you by our fine Patreon sponsors and White Rocket Entertainment. I'm your host for this program, Jason Alberich, a.k.a. Weasel Skull. And joining me as veteran Bondophile co-host is my brother, Jarrod Alberich, the yard sale artist, a.k.a. Death Probe. Hello, Jarrod. And you know the question. What's the most 007 Bondian thing that you've done since the last episode?
Do you remember the Bond film where for about 2 months straight he sat in his house and just drew pictures back in his studio and played video games and watched movies?
Yeah, it's called Tomorrow Never Comes.
That's the one.
Nice.
Well done, Pat. Well, everybody clap for Pat.
That was good. That was good.
Very good. Well, that's what I've been doing. So I haven't done anything terribly Bondian. I have been very rigorous with my exercise routine. I have been working out 6 days a week. My only rest day is Sunday. So I kind of feel like it's in Skyfall when he's getting back into shape after he came back. It's the closest thing I got, man.
You run on a treadmill with the oxygen mask.
Oxygen mask, the whole nine. Yeah. I got to wear the mask everywhere you go. But, yeah.
That is true.
But yeah, that's what I've been up to, man. What about you? What's the most Bond-like thing you've done?
I think you and I are on the same mission, man. We're out to avoid this assassin COVID-19, and COVID ain't going to get me, brother.
Good.
This episode is the third episode of our ongoing series on a channel called MI6 Rogue Agents. On Rogue Agents, Jarrod and I are continuing our journey, taking two friends in our lives who are recently promoted field agents after completing their trek through all 24 Eon Bond films within the 007 universe. 25 if you count the non-Eon Never Say Never Again. And I do. These rogue agents are joining us to talk about the 007 universe, and that could mean books, it can mean music, it can mean video games, essentially any medium that connects to the Bond franchise that we love so much here at On Her Majesty's Secret podcast. So let's welcome our rookie agents to the show. Delvin, what Bondian thing have you done recently?
Well, much like you gentlemen, I've been stuck in the house. So, I don't know, work out something, free radicals.
Gotcha. Nice. I love it. Pat, I know tomorrow never comes, but what are you doing to prepare for tomorrow?
With all that's been going on in the world today, is I've been actually out there doing some heavy Q computer work, the kind of Q.
Old Q, or the new Q?
New Q, millennial Q.
Don't get him started again.
Yeah.
So you're doing nothing of any importance. Got it. Okay.
I'm going out there and working hard to support the people in
Pat's
the
being
field.
humble. Pat works in a hospital and he's out there doing the Lord's work. Good job, Pat.
You going under the front lines, Pat?
Getting close to it, yes.
Holy cow. Well, let's give it up for Pat, man. He's actually doing something out there. And while the rest of us are waiting for this thing to blow over, find a pub and wait for this thing to blow over. Pat's actually doing the Lord's work out there. Thanks, Pat.
I admire your courage.
He had lots of guts.
That should be everybody, right?
Well, normally, Jarrod, it would be everybody. But today we've got one special guest. We've got another rogue agent. He's socially isolating from us, so for being responsible. But we have Alan Porter, author of the definitive book on 007 comics called James Bond, The History of the Illustrated 007. And he's from our sister podcast, well, the one you're listening to right now, On Her Majesty's Secret podcast. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. It's great to be here and to be working with the Rogue Agents. It's fun to be with you guys again in this guise. I mean, I've been with you guys before on the other podcast, on Longbox Crusade, but it's fun to be with you talking Bond.
So technically, we're guesting on your show. Or I don't know.
I can't figure this. Am I guesting on your show? Or are you guesting on our network? I have no idea.
Some Thunderball bull crap. I don't know.
Yeah, no, we'll figure it out.
We can officially thank you, Alan, for the nice compliment for our graduation. So thank you for
you're
that
welcome.
send-in.
It may have been a bit gashy, but it was heartfelt.
Delvin, remember you called him out. Your smart comment was, Alan, you told me you should be embarrassed that he gushed like that. I remember your jokes better than you do, Delvin.
I did forget that.
I forgot it too.
You guys said Alan doesn't listen to the show.
Apparently, he's gone rogue.
Yeah.
We don't know. It could be here. It could be. He's everywhere. So, Alan, let's talk about you. Let's talk about this book. You're going to have to tell me what's in it because I don't read books. But I do enjoy the pictures.
Well, it's got lots of pretty pictures.
It does.
The book, when it originally came out, was designed to be, as you very kindly said, the definitive history of Bond in comics, covering all the Bond comics that have been issued around the world that I could find at that point. The book's actually been out for quite a while now, several years. And of course, just shortly after I finished the book, Dynamite decided that they were going to go off and do Bond comics. So the book was immediately out of date because it doesn't cover any of the Dynamite comics. But it pretty much covers everything from the first adaptation of Casino Royale newspaper strip in the 1950s right through to the Topps GoldenEye comics in 1995 with information on comics in America, England, Chile, Sweden, India,
Chinese
Russia,
bootlegs.
Chinese
How about,
bootleg. Yeah. And
Czechoslovakia?
I actually don't think there is any from Czechoslovakia, but it covers every Bond comic that I could find that had been published around the world and includes plot summaries, information on the artists, when it was published, and there's a few essays up front about the history of Bond in comics, and then some interviews at the back with various Bond comics creators. And it's lavishly illustrated, as the publisher would say.
It is indeed lavishly illustrated. And man, there is a whole bunch of stuff in here that I never knew existed, and I will keep my eyes open for.
Ever since it's come out, people have been sending me stuff or making me aware of stuff that isn't in the book. So, of course, like I said, with any book, as soon as you publish it, it's immediately out of date because there are people out there who know way more than you do. So,
Volume 2, right there.
Yeah, we got other stuff to do first.
I know you do. But I will say this. I have actually read Alan's book cover to cover, and it is really great. But if you're a big Bond nut like I am, all it really is a checklist of things you have to track down on eBay.
Yes, that's exactly what I was saying. Yes. I started looking up that Dr. No on eBay, and I was like,
no, that's expensive.
No way.
Yeah.
To sell one of my kidneys to get that.
Yeah, I have been accused of causing people to spend a lot of money. So I have to ask Jarrod, reading it cover to cover, was that before or after you gave it away to your brother?
I was moving on. What's the next segment of the show?
I was going to give Alan a chance to talk about his podcast if he would like to.
So if you're listening to this on a Majesty's Secret podcast, you may be aware that we also do 2 other shows that I'm involved with. One is reviewing all the Bond movies. We've just finished Never Say Never, so now we've done the complete 25. Next up will be Casino Royale, the 1967. It's taken me 2 years to get Van Allen Plexico to agree to watch that movie, so I'm looking forward to that one. And then once a month, for some obscure reason, I get online with Jarrod and we riff about Bond music and we working through the soundtracks. Next up for us is the aforementioned Never Say Never. So,
yeah,
the music of that
right after this, or maybe it came out right before. Anyway, in this neighborhood,
general vicinity of this one coming. Yeah. So yeah, once a month there's a movie review, and once a month there's a show looking at Bond music called Bond Music 6 of the Best.
What are your thoughts on the film For Your Eyes Only? Great Bond movie or the greatest Bond movie?
Oh my God.
The best Roger Moore movie.
That's true.
Thank you. I'll take that. Yes, that is true.
See what happens when you let Jason go rogue?
I never should have given him the script.
Any movie that features a woman with a crossbow is good as far as
I know, right? Try telling it to Delvin.
Oh, my, here we go.
Here, minding my own business.
Anyway, thank you, Alan. Well, let's get to our rogue subject for this episode, which is Marvel.
You didn't ask me what Bondian thing I'd done in the last few weeks.
That doesn't say to in the script, so we're not.
Well,
I'm sorry, Alan. What's the most Bondian thing you've done since we last talked?
Well, funny you should ask. I was thinking about that when you guys were talking, and I reckon actually it was probably last Sunday morning when I actually had scrambled eggs, bacon, and marmalade on fresh toast, and it was like, it's pretty much James Bond's breakfast, so I'm going with that. That's probably as Bondian as I've done in the last few weeks.
I agree with you, Alan. I've confessed this before, but I'll say it again. I have not read all of the Ian Fleming novels, so I'm spending my time rectifying that. I just finished Dr. No. I've been reading them in order. And every time I read him and I read what he's having for breakfast, I'm like, damn, I'm hungry. That's a good breakfast right there.
That is a good breakfast.
All I had was a bowl of Cheerios, some BS. Bonnie and thing done checked. Anyway, let's get to our rogue subject for this episode. Marvel Super Special number 26, featuring the comic adaptation of Octopussy. The credits for this issue are provided by Mike's Amazing World of Comics. The publisher is Marvel. The cover date is 1983. The on-sale date was May 3rd, 1983, and it cost a whopping $2.50.
Man, like in 83, that today's dollars, that's like $42.
Inflation is a mother.
But for $42, you got 64 pages, 48 for the story of Octopussy, and then 16 additional bonus pages with an article and other material. The editor was John Barraclough. The writer was Steve Moore. Penciler was Paul Neary. The inker was Paul Neary. And the letterer was Annie Parkhouse, née Haffacree. The colorist was also Paul Neary. And the cover credits, the art is Dan Guzzi. It was reprinted in 1983 in Marvel UK hardback James Bond Annual.
Fancy
dance.
I've always wanted to get my hands on one of those UK annuals. Hadn't happened yet.
eBay.
That's right. And the cover review will be brought to you by Jarrod.
Thank you, Agent Jason. It's actually quite easy to miss that this is an issue of Marvel Super Special because that title is relegated to a small black and white text box. The real eye catcher is the title Octopussy, which interestingly enough isn't done in the same font as the movie. On this cover, Octopussy is written in orange and red circus style letters with James Bond written above it and 007 written below it in blue letters. The main cover image is the Dan Guzzi poster image of Roger Moore being wrapped by an 8-armed Maude Adams. It's all on a gradient rose-colored background. And at the bottom of the cover are 2 inserted photos from the film. The first is Roger Moore sliding down the banister, shooting the machine gun. Awesome.
Yeah.
The second is a circus clown fighting with one of the knife-throwing twins. Kind of terrifying. But aside from that, that's your cover, boys.
Well, thank you, Jarrod. So we're going to go around the horn and get some quick cover thoughts. And we'll start it off with our guest, Alan Porter. What are your thoughts on this one, Alan?
I like the cover of this one. The fact that it actually uses the movie poster makes it different from a lot of the other movie adaptations that you immediately know what it is. It catches your eye. Great artwork on the poster, and I like the way they actually cut it out and used it here. Nicely balanced. The freaky clown, the expression on his face as well is just...
I know, right?
Clowns are bad enough, but I'm not sure.
You can see like a kid picking up off the spinner rack and being like, this is
So, yeah, I think the cover works. It works really well. It's good.
Jarrod, what would you like to add?
Good note from Alan. This is really, I think, the first time they've used the movie poster art, and it's just stunning. I mean, Dan Guzzi, this is a home run painting. I think it's a painting. Pretty sure it's a painting. Again, I pointed out that the font was different, but I thought it was a standout. You know, it really pops. Octopussy kind of catches your eye. You get a couple insert images from the film, even though one's terrifying. It does a real good job of sort of inviting you into this world of this new movie, which, by the way, as my older brother Jason will remember, this is the first one I saw on the big screen. So special place in my heart. A really captivating cover. It does a real good job. And I will pass it to Delvin.
I think I would be intrigued by this cover if I saw it. I would probably think it was something sci-fi related, particularly the woman with the 8 arms. But if you're going to get this, you probably know something about James Bond or think that James Bond is cool. So I do like it for the main image. And the action scene was cool. And as mentioned before, the clown, I didn't like anything about the clown in the movie. I didn't like anything about the clown on this cover. Can't sleep. Clowns will eat me. Pat.
I don't think I've ever heard of Marvel Super Special, so this was kind of really interesting to me. I've never had one before, so yeah.
All right, I'll stop.
But yeah, definitely seeing this picture reminds me and takes me back to movie theaters back in the 80s. You know, every poster was a nicely drawn poster of the movie. Really like that a lot. I didn't notice the Octopussy in that different font until Jarrod just said that. I'm like, oh yeah, it is the circus. And then, you know, with what this movie or comic adaptation has in it, makes kind of sense now why they did it that way. But yeah, definitely a really nice looking cover. The pictures, yeah, they're all right to me. It definitely tells me that it's kind of magazine kind of a thing. It's a, you know, it's the cross between comic book and magazine.
Right.
What the vibe I get on it.
That's Marvel Super Special all day. Pat, I know you said you didn't really know much about it. I know, right? I love Marvel Super Special magazine, so I have to jump in. I have tons of issues. Some of them are very affordable and great stuff, like Return of the Jedi, Last Starfighter, some Conan stuff. I mean, it's a big variety magazine.
And look then.
Yeah, some of them are real affordable on eBay, and then some of them are like very expensive. But the vast majority are pretty affordable, and I encourage you and any of our listeners, if you want to move beyond Bond and just check out Marvel Super Special, they're great entertainment. Great entertainment.
That first Kiss one, I read that the band put their blood in the ink.
In the ink, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the more expensive ones to find.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I'd heard of Marvel Super Special, but when I was on Mike's Amazing World, I was like, let me see which ones were out there. And I was like, oh, I had that one. Oh, I didn't know that one even existed. That's so cool. You know?
I have to look at my Jedi one then. I wonder if it says Marvel Super Special and I just didn't know it.
Yeah,
might be.
I've been collecting them up over the last couple of years, and I got a fair amount of them, but just not the expensive ones.
So one of the things that I thought about this cover, and I'll throw it out to you guys, is I'm not really sure that I'm mad about those two photo insets at the bottom, because it covers up about a third of that amazing artwork. And I would really like to see, the rest of Bond's jacket, Octopussy's leg, and then maybe move that Marvel Super Special down to the bottom right.
This is all about some Maud Adams' thigh, isn't it?
If we're being honest. Yes.
Well, you get it on the next page. On the
I guess
cover.
that's true, but I want it on the cover. It's just like, Dan Guzzi made this beautiful image, and a third of it's covered up. Well, maybe a quarter of it.
I like your idea better, Jason. I do. I think that first image is what would draw me to it much more than just two random stills from the movie itself.
Yeah, I agree. The only other thing that I noticed, I love that orange background. I mean, it just makes Bond and Octopussy pop, and the title letters up there just makes it really just kind of explode off the cover. I think that's really cool.
Definitely.
Well, let's talk about some cover ratings. And just in case we need to remind anybody of the rating system, we rate it on a score of 1 through 7. A 7 means you loved it. It shook your martini. A 6 means it was excellent. 5, it was very good. 4, it was good. 3, it was just okay. 2, not so good. And 1 means you hated it. It stirred your martini. We'll start with Alan. Alan, what score would you give this cover?
I think I'd give it a 5. It really stands out from all the, if you take a look at what else was on sale that week on the comic spinner rack and on the magazine rack, I think it really did the job. It stood out. I think it's one of the best covers for an adaptation, like we said. In fact, they actually uses the great art from a movie poster. I will agree with you. I think it would have been even better without the two stills on the front. So I think that's what's keeping it at a 5 for me. But it does the job and it does it well.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Alan. Jarrod, what are your thoughts? What are you going to give it?
I'm going to go right with Alan. I think this is a strong 5. Good cover, memorable, not a home run, but, stand-up double, maybe a triple. And I will shovel it over to Delvin.
I'm in agreement with the two gentlemen who went before me. I will give it a 5 as well. With the ideas that you mentioned, Jason, I would bump it up to a 6 if that cover existed. Pat?
I'm going to go with 5 as well, too. I think agreement with everybody, too. If you didn't have those stills on it, this would be a really good looking poster. And maybe just had like James Bond at the bottom, maybe going across there instead of on the top.
Well, give me 5, fellas. I'm at a 5 as well. I think that'll bring it home. And it looks like we're 5s across the board.
Everybody up singing. Is that a different podcast?
It is.
Sorry.
Everybody kicks down. And now it's time for a short synopsis from your host. And that's me. The title is Octopussy. In this Marvel adaptation of Eon Productions' 13th 007 film, Octopussy, Steve Moore and Paul Neary do a faithful comic book rendition of the movie. When a fellow 00 is murdered in East Berlin, dressed as a clown and holding a counterfeit Fabergé egg, James Bond is sent to investigate. What on the surface appears to be an elaborate smuggling operation turns out to be a nefarious plot between a rogue Russian general, Pat, do us the honors.
Czechoslovakia?
Thank you. And an evil Indian prince. The comic lays out the story, which involves a frantic chase through the Marquis of Delhi, a violent brawl in a palace of beautiful women, a fight on top of a speeding train, Bond and an army of beautiful female circus acrobats raiding an impenetrable fortress, and a gut-churning fight on top of a flying plane. Marvel Super Special number 26 attempts to capture this film into 48 pages. Did Steve and Paul hit the mark? Let's discuss it. But first, let's get into the bric-a-brac. And gots to know, is this a first read or reread? Starting with you, Pat.
Well, Jason, I'm glad you asked. It's a first read for me, Jason.
It's probably about a millionth read for me. Delvin?
It's a first for me, Jarrod.
1,000,001 for me.
You just had to top me, didn't you?
I did. Alan, first read or reread? I bet I know the answer, but let the audience know.
Reread, but probably not a million, probably fifth or sixth read. Though I will say that when you invited me on this podcast and I went to get my copy, I actually realized I no longer had a copy. So I had.
Oh.
I know. I have no idea
What did you do?
The magic eBay fairy. So
I actually got this one off of eBay, and I want to say it was like $10.
Yeah, it was about $10. Yeah.
Yeah, it's affordable.
Yeah. And by the way, the hardback English annual reprint is about $20. I just looked it up.
Oh, I just assumed it was sitting on your shelf with your mini leather bound books.
I have the annual, but this one I had to get another copy.
Oh.
Well, let's get into some highs and lows. And we'll start with our guest. Alan, give me a high or low. What did you like or what were you not so happy with about this adaptation?
What I really liked about this adaptation was it missed out all the things that I hate about the movie. There was no Tarzan yell. There was no Barbara Woodhouse sit. There was no stupid racist jokes about keeping you in curry. There was no cliched stuff through the market. There was little bits of that. The gorilla suit thing was like blink and you miss it. So all the things that I really hate about Octopussy were not in this comics adaptation, and it was so much better for it. It moved a lot quicker. Didn't throw me out the story. So I actually enjoyed the story way more here than I do actually watching the movie.
I got to ask you, though, because it also didn't have the banister slide, and that was like one of the coolest things. That didn't bother you?
It didn't. Now I'm going to have to check.
Had it on the cover.
It's on the cover.
It's on the cover.
Is that false advertising?
It's false advertising. They didn't have it in there. That was like my favorite part when I was a kid. And he's going down there spraying brass. I was like, yeah. Jarrod, what are your thoughts? Highs or lows?
I think it's an incredible thought by Alan. As I told you guys, I think I was the first one to read it, and I told a couple of you guys, it's a fast read. Even though it's 40-some pages, it's brisk and fast. And I think Alan just really opened my eyes to the fact that this is a really entertaining version of Octopussy, minus some of the more things about Octopussy. Yeah. I think you could probably just pop on the John Barry soundtrack CD and read this thing while you're listening and have a great experience. That's an excellent point, Alan. I'm glad we had you on the show. Yeah,
right, my work is done. I'm off. Right.
Thanks, man.
Dropping the mic. He's out.
I was just going to take the low-hanging fruit, which you guys know was my nickname in college. The low-hanging fruit here is obviously the artwork. Isn't it very unique, very cool? There's no comic I've ever seen that looks quite like it. It looks almost watercolor painted. You can tell that the penciler did his own inks, like Jason pointed out in the information earlier, but in a real just incredibly good and capturing motion style. It's like nothing you've ever seen before. Very unique and very, very beautiful, I think.
What do you think of the layouts? Because that's another thing I noticed about it, too. Not only were the colors and the art unique, but I think that they used every space really well in order to get that movie into 48 pages.
Tons of panels per page. So good thing it's magazine size, right? Mm-hmm. Even with tons of panels per page and really, like you said, cramming the whole movie in that. Going back to what Alan said, it's a great experience. They capture the movie super well. And like I said, the visuals, I've never seen anything like it. And it's great.
Paul Neary, I think he was a great choice for this because he does mainly British comics. Did a lot of work for 2000 AD and Doctor Who magazine. So he's used to working with the magazine size page. To me, that's what it felt like reading. It felt like a good British comic. It's got that style and that sensibility to it. But I must admit, for a long time, I was actually wondering who I didn't actually realize he'd done the coloring himself. I was trying to do some research to find out who the colorist was because it's very striking, particularly in some particular scenes. The coloring really drives the story. So it's interesting that he did it himself. So
yeah, gorgeous book.
Very cool. Pat, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Alan and Jarrod on their 2 points there. I really like the way Alan said that because when I read this, I kind of read it like I was watching the movie. So my normal ritual would be when we were doing the movies was try to watch half of it and then watch the other half the next night because I'd have to do it late. So I started reading it late last night at about 1:00. I start reading it. So, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to read up to, 24 pages or whatever, found the halfway point. I read longer than that just because I was in, a certain spot. I'm like, okay, well, I just want to see where this goes. And I'm in this action beat now and I just got to keep reading and keep reading. So I went a little bit longer than what I did and really enjoyed it. Again, the artwork was just amazing. When they needed to have the facial pieces looked like Roger Moore. It looked like all the other actors that I remember from the movie when there were more close-up pictures of them.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. I thought that it was really a faithful rendering of Roger Moore as James Bond. And I was thinking way back when we did For Your Eyes Only, I was like, I don't think it was that accurate of a representation.
No, it wasn't.
That book.
No, this is more representation of them than I remember. You're right, from the For Your Eyes Only one.
So my question to you, Pat, was how disappointed were you when you got to the point with the Russian briefing and he didn't say Czechoslovakia?
I was looking for that.
I knew you were.
Downside to this comic.
I was looking for it
I couldn't
too.
remember. I'm like, is it in this movie that he says it? And I'm like, there's Gogol and there's Olaf. And I'm like, okay, it's coming. Where's he going to write this in here? Nope.
This comic is a 4.
Yeah.
You're a fool.
No Czechoslovakia. I'm done.
Delvin, what did you think, sir? High or low?
Before I lose what might be a pretty good thought, when you guys are asking what the artwork was reminiscent of, I was thinking of maybe a Crusademas episode that we do on Longbox Crusade, Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was very nice to look at. And there are a couple of splash pages in particular where the artwork just really, really popped. As far as the comic book itself, when I first started reading it, I'm like, yeah, I remember this from Octopussy. This is cool. And then it's like someone just hit the fast forward button. When you read the comic, it was a brisk read, and it had to be brisk because it can't carry out every intricacy that the movie can. I personally think that James Bond is a much better medium on the silver screen than it was on the comic book. But I do think that the comic book was a worthwhile venture, particularly given all the other stuff that they put in the back and everything. It was a complete James Bond experience, and that made it cool.
Good point.
Good point, Delvin. Thanks. Alan, back to you. Give me another high or low.
I'm actually going to go low, and I'm just going to pick up on something Delvin said. The stuff in the back.
Didn't read it. I just complimented it, but I did not read it. I was like, word.
Let's be honest. Only Jason, Alan, and I read the back.
I did read the back.
I read some of the bold words
Yeah.
that caught my eye. Like, oh, yeah, I know that word.
Yeah, it was 16 pages of PR fluff that really didn't tell you anything about the movie, and I just thought it was badly written, and I didn't think it was worth the 16 pages of the back. I would have much preferred some good behind-the-scenes stuff, or even interviews with the creative guys, rather than studio PR fluff. So,
No, I'm with you. I was excited to reread this thinking, oh, I bet there's cool behind-the-scenes stuff, and there's not. It's just like, this Bond adventure is really cool, and you should totally go see it, and here's some pictures.
And here's this person who did this stuff, and here's this person and all the stuff they did before. And it was like every cast member, every production person, and a list of their previous credits. I mean, I know there was no IMDb around at the time, but it was like reading a bunch of IMDb entries.
There was one thing that interested me in this is that in that particular part that caught my eye was the Living Daylights. They said they took that scenario for the opening of this.
Yes. Yeah, it was.
I found that interesting. I'm like, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that they didn't use here, and then they used it in Living Daylights. So.
One thing that I thought when I read that back stuff, and I agree with what you folks are saying, because I figured it would be some behind the scenes of the makings of the movie Octopussy. And what it really is kind of like a primer for James Bond history a little bit. But I thought that might be pretty cool. You know, if I was a teenage kid picking this up and I wanted to know more about the James Bond, the legacy of the films, I thought this would be a good starting place.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a good point. I just made the crack about IMDb, but we didn't have anything like that back then. So that might be a good way of actually figuring out, learning about the folks who were making the movie. I still think it could have flowed a lot better. It could have been written a lot better.
Yeah, no doubt. So Delvin, what are your thoughts?
I actually don't have anything else, which is funny. I know I thought it was it was a simple enough read. It was a faithful enough adaptation. I enjoyed it for what it's worth, even though I like the movie better. Now, even having said that, though, I would be interested to read other comic book adaptations of Bond movies. And I know that's weird. I know I just said that I like the movies more, but I would love to see how maybe some of the top artists in the industry did tilting their hand at a James Bond comic book and how cool it could possibly look. And maybe seeing something like a Little Nelly on the comic book medium or something like that, or an Aston Martin, something like that. I think that would be cool.
That would be kind of cool now that you mention it.
Here on Rogue Agents, we can definitely do some more shows for adaptations, although there's not a ton of straight movie comic adaptations.
That's surprising, particularly given the history of Bond. A part of me thinks we are so spoiled now with the technology that we have. I can go watch any Bond movie and I don't have to spend a lot of time going to do it. So why would I want to necessarily have a comic book adaptation and have to wait, say, 4 or 5 months if they broke it down like that? The answer to that question would be if it were really freaking cool. So if you had some artist, a Jim Lee or something that said, you know what, I want to do Skyfall or something like that. And heck yeah,
I'm reading that. Yep.
I would read that. I already know the story, but I would definitely want to see how someone like Jim Lee would portray that.
Yeah, their interpretation of it.
Yeah, I would love to see it. I think that would be great.
When did this come out? Was it before the movie or after? I just go back to, around
June 6th, the movie came out.
Okay, so it's
back out in the summer.
And this came out in May?
Yep.
So it's kind of goes on to what my theory and thought is, as I remember it as a kid, especially with the Indiana Jones ones, the Star Wars ones, they would come out maybe a month ahead of time, give you that primer, and you're like, oh man, I really got to go see this movie now, and then you'd go out and see the movie and you'd get the extra more detail, like Delvin is saying. There's more stuff going on. You get more action.
Yeah, I mean, the comics used to come out ahead of the movies. The novelizations used to come out ahead of the movies.
Yeah, it was a little bit ahead. Yep.
Yeah, everybody's so spoiler averse now that they wouldn't do that. I mean,
well, it was like Delvin was saying, though, too, because I was 12 when this movie came out, which would put Jarrod at about 7. There was no way for us to enjoy the movie again after the theater, except for this. Mm-hmm. We didn't have it on VHS. There was no DVDs. This was the way that we relived the Octopussy movie when we were kids.
Jason, you said there was no what?
DVD's nuts, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have company, people.
I'm going rogue.
All right, just to make this last longer, though, I got to point this out. A lot of times to get them in advance, and the film hasn't actually reached its final cut. We've all seen comic books where there's things in the comics and aren't in the movies. This thing is like spot on.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't spot anything that was
I was wondering that too. If there was something, maybe Alan, you could tell us. Was there something that was extra in this? Or
no, this is really one of the, if not the most faithful comics adaptation, which makes me think that they stuck pretty closely to the shooting script, because that's usually what folks work to. It also makes me wonder that the things that I don't like about Octopussy the movie were things that were ad-libbed on set and put in later, which is why they're not in the comic. Yeah, so
Curry.
And it may be that's why the Bannister scene's not in. It could be that that wasn't in the script. That
they got it. They got it on the cover.
So you're saying maybe Czechoslovakia was ad-libbed?
Yeah, could have been. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Go back to your thing about how many Bond movie comics there are. There was Dr. No.
The DC Showcase?
The DC Showcase. Then the next one was For Your Eyes Only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big gap.
Yeah. Then this one, License to Kill.
GoldenEye? License to Kill. Well, yeah, I do have that
one. And GoldenEye.
GoldenEye.
A third of GoldenEye.
For some people, a third of GoldenEye.
Why so random?
Well, there's a really good book that I can recommend that it actually tells the story of why the licensing was so random.
But you have to order it.
But you have to order it. It's available on Amazon.com.
Okay. For a few extra bucks, I know a guy who will autograph one and send it to you.
No, but it's really down to when the licensing moving around.
Jarrod, give us a high or low.
Oh, we've kind of gone long on some of these, so I'll be brief. This is both a high and a low, so this might be a landmark moment for our podcasting. I was endlessly entertained by how endlessly entertained James Bond was by making up puns in his head while he was doing it.
I know. That was something I noticed, too.
And on one hand, I was like, this is so stupid. But on the other hand, I was like, I'm endlessly entertained by this. So it's almost like the writer felt like he had to put words in every panel and not just let the action flow. He kind of had to do a little exposition with some puns or something. He felt like he did. I don't think he needed to.
I was like, you don't think Roger Moore had enough one-liners in the movie? He's had to make up for
He's
more?
got one like all the time. And I was just like, this is crazy. So I'll just leave it at that. I was highly entertained, but it also took me out of the story at the same time.
All right. Pat, last thought, high or low?
Looking at the part where he turns into the clown in this
when Daniel
one.
Craig steps in?
Funny every time.
And I remember this somewhat in the movie as well, too, is that it was like a short amount of time. But on the first panel on the page, it says, 3:35 is when he gets to the field and drives by. And the bomb's going to go off at 3:45, right, is what they set it off to. And so he's got like maybe about 10 minutes or so. He just got changed in the next panel. He goes, it's 3:41. Got to get into the tent. And he's already got the clown outfit on, the mask and all. I'm like, how does he do that in like a couple minutes?
We told you this on the episode we did. It's part of Secret Agent School. Clown speed makeup is something they go through.
That's something I didn't get taught yet. So
Because it was perfect. It was spot on perfect makeup.
He made the class honor roll on that one.
Yeah, it happens right between shooting and bedding women. It's putting on clown makeup.
I'll even bring back the old joke. Well, 007, well, you only got a 92 on marksmanship, but your clown makeup skills, you got a full 100. Congratulations, 007.
But even that picture where he comes out like that, that's Roger Moore in the clown outfit. You can definitely tell on that
Great
one.
art.
It's just awesome. And then the middle panel, you have the girl that was in the top hat. Well, I can't remember what her name was.
Magda.
Yeah. Looks exactly like her, too. I was like, wow, that's just amazing. I wonder if they did have like stills that maybe they were using.
I'm certain they had reference stills.
Yeah.
They must have.
Well, they did a fantastic job.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to wrap up our highs and lows. Now we're going to get into our final segment before the ratings that we're going to call Jokey James.
One of my friends sits this one out. She's just dead.
Well, let's let Alan kick us off. What was the funniest moment you thought in the book?
I'm actually going to go back to what Jarrod said. And it was Bond's inner monologue and the plan. Because we never get that in the movie, and those are really great, real throwaway lines. So, yeah, I enjoyed that. Actually, I will say the thing that I really liked about this particular version of Octopussy is in this one, Roger Moore does all his own stunts.
I like this guy.
I was looking for a picture of the butt kick, but I didn't get
butt
it here.
kicks of doom.
Perhaps I can fake something with these figures. But I think you got the point. Lots of points. Anyway,
He's on a roll in his own head while he's doing all these things.
He's slaying folks. He's laying down one-liners. Doing it all. Jarrod, Jokey James, which one's your pick?
Ultimately the same one as Alan, but for the sake of variety, I did laugh that not only did they remove the Tarzan y'all, even though there's a slight reference to it. He says it works for Tarzan. And then the next panel, why doesn't it work for me? And the way it's drawn, the vine's breaking, and the way he's fallen, it just made me laugh. I was just like, that's so un-Bondian that it's funny. But I just love the way it's drawn.
That's a great picture, too, because they spread out that picture through the 3 panels there.
Yeah, the motion's really great, and it's just very comedic, very un-Bond-like, and I'll give it to Delvin.
So I don't know if it's funny more than it's somewhat racy, but I had a funny thought when I saw the panel when they did the scene where Bond's in the bedroom and he asks, "What's that, Magda?" And she says, "That? Oh, that's my little Octopussy." I'm like, drawn differently, that would have been a completely racy moment in a kid's.
They really highlighted it, though, so there was clarity in what they're discussing.
It's like, yeah, that tattoo was about 3 or 4 inches high. You know what? Just skip me. Go ahead.
All right, Pat, you're up. Which one was your favorite?
Going to go with the clown. Just
Everybody loves the clown.
Everybody loves the clown. Yeah.
I didn't like it.
But again, like Alan pointed out, most people don't like the clown thing. It doesn't bother me as much as a lot of Bond fans, but it's literally 2 pages, maybe a page and a half, really.
Yeah.
Well, it was like most of the book. They had to speed through it. They tried to set it up as quickly as they could, and they kept it going. So you just had to
6 panels of clown.
Yeah, you just had to be like, go with it.
I thought the very last panel, I didn't catch it at first. And I noticed, oh, that's his cast going over the side of the boat so he could hook up with Octopussy. I thought that's pretty funny.
Okay, which brings me to my final question before we wrap up for tonight. Was James Bond faking his injury so he could stay with her at the end of the movie? Or was he like, just screw it, I don't care how bad it hurts, I'm going to have me a good
I'm going
time?
to suck it up to this compound.
I'm going to ask Alan's professional opinion on that. 'Cause I've always been 50-50 in my head. Is he really injured or is he just not care?
Yeah, is he a malingerer or is he an idiot? We don't know.
I always just thought he wasn't as injured as he was letting on. So, yeah.
Just so he could kind of be the lazy, slow boat.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
You know, in all fairness, he did save the world, so.
Yeah.
Again.
And he's getting to hang out with Maud Adams, so I can't blame him.
Yeah, have you ever hung out with Maud Adams, Al?
I'm not telling that story. Listen to the Octopussy. It's on 6 of the Best. Go back and listen to the 6 of the Best that just came out, the Octopussy one.
The Octopussy one? Okay.
Yeah. Before you wrap it up, you sort of mentioned it earlier, Jason. This was actually the only one that had 2 completely separate movie adaptations. There was actually one done in Sweden.
I saw that in your book, yeah.
Which is not a reprint of this. It's a completely separate official adaptation. So it's the only movie that ever got 2 official comics adaptations. Oh. And that one's not as good art-wise. It's very flat. So nowhere near as good.
Still pretty cool.
Yeah.
And they make a fine meatball.
Yeah, I was looking up on Clinton Roll's site to see if he's actually done a translation of this one yet, and he hasn't. It is on the site as one to be done. So at some point, I guess on the Comics Royale website, he will do a translation of it.
I don't know if you guys remember that. We interviewed him a while back.
Yeah.
He does the Comics Royale website where he does the translations of all the international versions, painstaking translations. And I got to tell you guys, you know, you read about it in Alan's book, but there are some just bat crap insane Bond comics out there where just the most bizarre things happen, like you wouldn't believe. Like they're just making things up left and right.
What was that one we read not too long ago?
Serpent's Tooth?
Bond yes.
Bond and dinosaurs. Yes. Bond and dinosaurs.
That was weird, man.
That was funny because you were talking about it on the 00 files with our buddy over there. And he didn't even know about it. He was like, you know, we need to see like Bond with dinosaurs. And I sent him that screenshot and I was like, it's been done. He was like, what?
Well, they had like that whole fortress site too that just got up and walked. Like,
yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole other podcast. We'll come back to that one.
We might do what that could be in Rogue Agents. We don't know.
Yeah, Rogue Agents probably needs to tackle Serpent's Tooth at some point.
Oh, man. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's get down to our overall rating. And once again, this is how we rate it, 1 through 7. 7 means you loved it, shook your martini. 6 means it's excellent. 5 means it's very good. 4 means it's good. 3, it's just okay. 2, it's not so good. And 1, you hated it. It stirred your martini. And we will start with our guest. Alan, what are you going to rate this adaptation?
Can I do 6.5?
No, you may not. We have a very solid...
It would have been a 7 other than the PR bump at the back. Between 6 and 7.
It's somewhere in there.
We're going to call it a 6.
All right. Go 6 if you want. If you've got to be that tough. Right.
Jarrod.
6 is excellent. Yeah, it is. It's good.
I'm right there with Alan. I think this is a 6. Breezy read, beautiful art. What's not to love? Just didn't add much to anything. I think if you added something to the story or to the lore, then it would have got you that 7. But as far as doing its job, it did its job super well, and I'm giving it a 6.
All right. Delvin, what do you think?
I'm at a 5, same as I was with the cover. I do like the idea of this. Wouldn't mind reading more. That's it. Pat?
I agree with Delvin. I'm on a 5 as well, too. If I could bump it up a little bit to a 5.5.
You can't.
But I can't. Obviously, I can't.
Wrong.
No.
I'm going with a 5. Is decent adaptation, and the artwork really helped sell this one.
Well, I understand you and Delvin's 5. Like I already admitted, I have a lot of nostalgia for this book, so it's going to bump me up to a 6 as well. So I'll land with Jarrod and Alan there. Very good scores for this book.
Especially for an adaptation. You know, I don't ever expect a ton out of them.
Yeah, this was really fun, checking this out. This is a walk down memory lane for me.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's the best of the adaptations.
And I like the For Your Eyes Only, especially in its Marvel Super Special magazine format, which I own.
Aha. Well, let's pass it over to our network founder, Van Plexico, to thank all the Patreon sponsors who make this show possible.
And we have to pause here for just a second. We have to thank the folks who keep our programs on the air. across our entire White Rocket Entertainment network. For as little as $1 a month, you can join their ranks. Just go to www.plexico.net, Plexico.net. You will find there links to everything that the White Rocket Entertainment Network does, from books and comic books to podcasts about James Bond, about sports, and all the entertainment shows that we do here on the White Rocket Podcast, and all the other things that I'm involved in. And you also will find a great big link that goes to the Patreon page, and you can join it, and there are a number of benefits you get for being a member. But mainly, you know that you're keeping our show going and keeping all of our shows on the network going for the foreseeable future. So for as little as $1 a month, though we certainly appreciate more, you can be part of the White Rocket family and know that all of us here, and I especially, appreciate you very much. Our current supporters include Matthew Flowers, Carl Von Drunker, Samuel Salvatore, and Christopher Burleson, along with Phil Amthor, Ben Spooner, William Glenn Matthews, Gary Grant, Wynn Carroll, Brian Gray, Winston Body, Willie Carden, Tom Anderson, Susan Trawick, Logan Chilton, Stephen Thompson, Chris Usher, Steve Trawick, and Richard Stevens. We also have Clinton and Christopher Stewart, Mickey B., William Morgan, Phil Davis, Joshua Corbett, John Otsuki, Preston Settle, Daniel Odom, A.U. Falling Up, Alchemist, Kevin Smith, Clarence Alford, Will Summerford, David Hegler, Johnny Caldwell, Theodore Gary, Reynolds Wolfe, Joel Beckham, Valiant Hermes, Jacob and Robin Fleming, Clay Henson, Ann Kanjian, Catherine England, George Gaston, John McCune, David Evers, Timothy, Steve Harlan, Dan Thompson, Wes Atkinson, Rich Reimer, Hugh Anderson, Blake Heron, Steve Houston, Cato the Barner, Danny Flack, Papa Todd, Russell Milling, Kevin Kenoy, Don Zederman, Ross, Lane Middleton, Shannon Butson, Randall Walker, Shane Bailey, Mick Vijacana, Chris Thrash, Tony Perry, Alex Wynn, Josh Teal, David Simpson, Earl Ricks, Mike Finley, and C.T. Wayne. And finally, we have Jeremy Minton, Wardam Wade, Spanky, J.W. Rice, Jason Alberich, Russell Souther, Paul Bankson, Joseph Iliff, Justin Bean, Kevin Mahan, Stephen Wyatt, Trevor Johnson, Auburn Elvis, Robert Drain, Brandon Smith, Royce Alvarez, Thomas Brinson, David Smiley, Matthew Wagstaff, Donnie Reynolds, Wade Carson, Ivor Evans, John Zavachin, Michael Morton, Lawrence Kane, Darren Powell. We're almost to the end, but we appreciate all you guys. Chris Camo, Ben Amos, Ruth and Darren Sutherland, Patrick Williams, Rob Morgan, Stephen Schuster, James Taylor, John Stubbs, Kenneth Brent Raines, Nicholas Craig, Joseph Miller, Mark Squire, Chris, Brent Rumble, plus our great Surfer Chickify and our anonymous and occasional and one-time donors. We appreciate all of you so much. Just go to www.plexico, Plexico.net to sign up.
And that's the show. As a reminder to our audience, if you'd like to be part of the show, you can send us your questions, comments, or trivia challenges to ohmspod@outlook.com or over on our Twitter page at ohmspod. If you'd like, you can even use the email. As a reminder, that's ohmspod@outlook.com to send us an audio recording of your question or comment. We might even play it on the show. And we would love to hear from you and make you part of the show.
Oh, Jason, I have to break in. We have a send-in for this episode.
What?
Ooh.
We do.
Who's it from?
Rusty Agents.
Oh.
Good evening, agents. This is Jeff from the Junior Mission Control Center, also known as Jeff and Rick Presents. I am providing this week's field report on the 1983 Marvel comic Super Special number 26, which was a comic book adaptation of the James Bond movie Octopussy from the Junior Agents stationed in the Pacific Northwest. As usual, I surprised my fellow Junior Agent Rick during the recording of our regular podcast, Unpacking the Power of Power Pack, with a pop quiz in the middle of our script. His answers are not prepared. Yes, we were prognosticating the future.
Way to go us, I guess.
Meanwhile, in a galaxy far, far away...
Home of the Pop Quiz! That's right, Pop Quiz, hotshot! In 1983, Marvel Comics came out with Super Special number 26, which was a comic book adaptation of the James Bond movie Octopussy. And in case you are unfamiliar with Marvel Comics, they are the creators of some long-lived and beloved characters, such as Litterbug, Dr. Bong, Ruby Thursday, Asbestos Lady, Birdbrain, 3D Man, Leather Boy, and Hell Cow, who is a vampire cow. So, in keeping with Marvel and the octopus theme, name for me 5 Marvel characters or organizations that use either the octopus or squid iconography. Tick-tock, Rick. Tick-tock.
First of all, comeuppance, how you doing? Well, I'm going to go ahead and start with Hydra, because that's one.
Yes.
I will go ahead and say Doc Ock. That's another one.
That's a great one.
That's a good one. Let's see here. Let's also go ahead and use
Carrie, if you want to help him, go ahead. But you know, Rick. Tick-tock.
Tick-tock. 5 of them, huh?
5 of them.
Squid or octopus themed? Let's see here. I would say, boy, oh boy, oh boy. I would say also, oh boy. Oh wait, hang on. Organization. Well, I know a place. There's the island, the Octopus Island that Magneto took over in an X-Men book. Does that count?
You know what? I'm willing to give that to you. We will go for the possibly named Octopus Island from an X-Men book.
Octopus Island. That's what J. Miles called it. Octopus Island. That counts. That will count.
Okay. We can take that. There's 3. You're over halfway there.
Do we know any other ones?
I know you're living on a prayer right now, but
I really am. I'm living on an absolute prayer. I would go ahead and say Squid Boy, because Squid Boy, he was very well known in the early Silver Age comics. You can look him up. There was also I
am going to look up Squid Boy, and I don't think that Squid Boy is an actual character. Let's see. Is Squid Boy
an actual?
You mean Sammy Parr, who is a fictional character appearing in American comic books published by Marvel Comics. He was a 10-year-old mutant who was a student at the Xavier Institute for Higher Learning.
Hey?
Yes.
Hey!
You get Squid Boy.
I get Squid Boy. That's 4. There's
4 out of 5.
I need 1 more. Ooh. Yeah, and we also have Squid Boy here in the Franklin Richard comic books, which were by Marvel. There you go. Squid Boy, right there.
You've already used a Squid Boy reference.
Yeah, but that's another Squid Boy.
You don't get 2 of the same name.
That's a different Squid Boy. This is a different Squid Boy.
You know what? Okay, you know what? I'm going to give you 5 out of 5. They seem a little... I know, I was thinking of that. Yeah, that came out of a Franklin Richards. I remember reading that. So I'm going to give that to you. There's 5 out of 5. I think some of it's a little bit weak, but I also would have accepted Superior Octopus.
Okay.
Lady Octopus.
Okay, I've never heard of them.
Lady Octopus is a lady Dr. Octopus. She is a protege of Dr. Octopus.
Yep, okay.
She also has a force field.
Yep.
She was never popular, but she is in the Sinister Syndicate, which is being run by the Beetle. It is an all-female crew.
Okay.
And I would also have accepted Squid.
Squid.
Yes, his name is Squid. He is a person who can transform himself into a superpowered squid.
Well, hey, I got 3 that weren't on your list, so there we go.
I know, I'm very impressed by that. So congratulations. Carrie, if you could leave the room for a minute, I'm going to give your daddy his reward. Training, as always, will continue in the field until our junior agents are able to handle any situation. Thank you for accepting our reports. Until next time, Junior Agents, signing out.
Oh, my goodness.
Every time.
Oh, man.
I'm so glad Jeff decided to go rogue with us.
I like how he pulled it out of his butt and he still got murdered.
Yeah, you knew he was getting shot one way or the other.
You knew it was coming after all. Time to pay the
I'm just
piper.
glad I remembered we got to send in for this one. A quick break in, folks. As I was working on the post-production editing of this episode, I received 1 extra send-in from our boy Donnie Z from over at the 00 Files. So let's listen to what Donnie Z sent us.
Hello, rogue agents. This is Don Zuiderman calling in from the Netherlands, and I wanted to send you an audio clip concerning Octopussy, a Marvel super special. You know, the comic that was released simultaneously with the film in 1983. Now, I am fully aware my audio clip is too late. My apologies. You have already recorded your show. However, I wasn't able to send my clip earlier. 3 weeks ago, I saw your tweet announcing that you would be delving into the Octopussy comic. Unfortunately, I didn't have this specific comic yet. So I went on eBay immediately and I managed to find a very near mint copy that I bought from a very nice chap in the UK. It took a while for the post to deliver it, but literally, today the comic arrived to my house. Now, I reached out to Jarrod and he said I could still send you something and he would then add it in post-production. So here it is. First, a few general impressions. I have to say the drawings or the artwork is impressive. You can easily recognize each of the original actors. Roger Moore, Maud Adams, Louis Jourdain. They're all excellent. However, the coloring feels very awkward. Maybe this is old-fashioned, I don't know, but why is everybody either completely yellow or green or red or blue? Is that something they just did back then? Also, the action scenes, they are somewhat difficult to understand. Lots of violent moving lines, but it's not really clear what's going on. I do like that the original Fleming backstory of Major Dexter Smythe is still in there. I feel this legacy is important to keep intact. And also Magda. She's even sexier in this comic than in the film. But on the downside, we also get the Tarzan reference. And the gorilla suit is even in there. Why? Why? And then, if you don't know the film and you just read the comic like some people might have done back in '83, the plot is really quite difficult to follow. I mean, as a companion piece to the film and as part of Bond history, it's really nice, but strictly as a comic book, it's definitely not one of the greatest out there. I think I prefer the For Your Eyes Only comic, also by Marvel. That being said though, the plot of Octopussy to begin with is pretty much impossible to explain, so I really can't hold that too much against this comic. What I do very much appreciate is the extra article after the comic story ends, including a few very nice behind-the-scenes photos. My final verdict? I am kinda glad Marvel didn't continue these. They don't add too much, and this makes me appreciate Dynamite's current run of the James Bond comics even more. For me, this sadly isn't an all-time high. This is Don Zuiderman, signing out.
Well, hey, thanks for that send-in, everybody. And also, if you're an iTunes listener, we'd greatly appreciate it if you left a review for the show. That will help raise the show's profile to attract more of the 007 family to this program. As a reward for leaving a review, we will read your entire review on an upcoming episode of MI6 Rogue Agents. I want to thank Jarrod, Pat, Delvin, and Alan for joining me on this episode. Before we sign off, let's find out where the listeners can find us on the internet. Alan, why don't you start us off?
So for Bond stuff, you can get me on Twitter at Bond Lexicon and on Instagram and Tumblr at James Bond Lexicon.
Oh, thanks a lot, Alan. And you can find me at Weasel Skull on Twitter or at Jason Alberich on Facebook and Instagram. Delvin.
You can find me on Twitter at DEE_RAY1977. Pat.
You can find me on the Twitter at Christatos01. Jarrod.
You can find me on multiple social media networks. Pat can put out at best 2 social media networks.
One in Czechoslovakia.
All right. Anyway, you can find me at Yard Sale Artist. It's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all Yard Sale Artist. And please check out my YouTube channel. You search Yard Sale Artist, you'll find me, and I'm drawing pictures and stuff.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you have enjoyed this episode of MI6 Rogue Agents. If you've enjoyed this crew and want to hear more from them, but in the realm of comic books, check out the Longbox Crusade. Pat, where can they find that?
Well, Jason, I'm glad you asked. You can find that on the Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at Longbox Crusade. Otherwise, you can find us at www.longboxcrusade.com. Back to you, Jason.
Thank you, Pat. And thanks to all you fellows for taking on yet another dangerous mission. Thanks to the listeners who tuned in. And if you'd like to leave a question or a comment on this or any of our other episodes, feel free to contact the show on Twitter at OHMSPod or email us at ohmspod@outlook.com. We hope to hear from you soon. Next episode of MI6 Rogue Agents will feature Delvin's choice.
Who knows? We're going rogue.
It's up to Delvin. It's going to be a surprise. And on Her Majesty's Secret Podcast will return.
Go buy Alan's book, James Bond, The History of the Illustrated 007.
It's got pictures and it's got words.
Words and pictures.
Words and pictures. Beautiful
No
pictures.
extra charge.
Well-written words, and he's British, so you know he can write.
Commas used properly.
Mm-hmm. Using those commas properly.
Subject-verb agreement.
Right. Doesn't end the sentences
Since
with
a preposition. That's exactly what I was about to say.
Active voice.
Once when I was with Am in Tokyo, we had an interesting experience.
Outtakes.
Thank you, Miss Moneypenny. That's all.
Jason, what are you eating?
Blizzard. Got anything with ice? Delvin's got something with ice in it, I know. Coke Zero, that's my brand right there.
How am I getting accused and I haven't clinked a single ice cube?
Do you or do you not have something with ice?
That's immaterial.
I don't know if I've ever tasted marmalade now.
Really?
I don't know.
I would bet you have.
I'm sure you must
Maybe
have.
I have.
I knew a dancer named Marmalade one time. And
I guess that. There are no reprints.
I'm going to pull you up on the no reprints thing. It was reprinted.
Ooh, someone didn't read Alan's book.
I did. You didn't say it was reprinted in the book.
I did. In fact, if you go to the top of page 80 on the right-hand column, top line, what does it say?
He's looking it up.
Ooh, it's getting called out.
I know what it says because I read it cover to cover.
Reprinted in 1983. Well, that's UK. That doesn't count. All right, we'll try that one again. It's not in that closet behind you?
No.
Open that closet. We want to see it.
If I ever go rob his house, I know right where to go to. If you ever come home and your place is robbed and it's only that closet, you'll know who you are.
I know exactly.
Only the Bond stuff is missing. It's weird.
It's weird.
I can't do this while I watch Jason eat ice cream for stuff. Don't look at the
spot, Jason.
It's delicious.
I think of that Seinfeld episode where George is eating the Sunday on TV.
Yeah, at the tennis court.
At the tennis match. This episode's intro music is an all-time high cover by Kyle Brook and Emma Shipman. Check out Kyle's YouTube page. He does some awesome stuff.